We are here at the Queen Victoria Memorial right outside of Buckingham Palace, designed in 1901 by Sir Aston Webb, who designed a lot of the modifications to Buckingham Palace after it was acquired by the Crown. The statue was unveiled in 1911, but it wasn't completed until 1924. But what's cool about this is that it was designed the same year she died. She died in 1901, and that same year they began designs on that, on this, because Victoria was such a cultural icon. When she was born, Victoria is the last of the Hanover rulers, I think, in Europe. I think she was the last European Hanover, but certainly the last Hanover in England, because it wasn't cool for them to do like what Elizabeth did and just like take her own name instead of her husband's name. So she, after her came the Saxe-Coburg rulers, who are, as we know now, the Windsors, after the name was changed by King George V during World War I, because Saxe-Coburg is a German house. So they wanted it, Windsor sounded a lot more English, they needed to change it to avoid being overthrown during World War I when tensions with royals in Europe were running high, like after Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated and other monarchies were forced to abdicate in favor of democracy. As I said though, when she took power, it was already a constitutional monarchy, Britain was, so she didn't have a lot of political power, but she had huge pull as far as the culture of the era, social norms, because she was known as an icon. A lot of the reason for her strict moral status, her moral statute, her values. So she became a huge cultural center point for the era, and because her rule is defined as the Victorian era because, one, it was so long, and two, it was she had such an impact on the culture of the time, not just in London, but in the rest of Europe as well. So that's why she is immortalized here. Fun fact, you can see the little cracks around her nose if you get close enough. I anticipate that the nose is one of the last pieces that was finished. Oh, another thing about Victoria. Victoria was, she's the Empress of India during a time when India was going through a crisis with Britain because the British, I think the British Tea Company, I think that's what it was called, who was in charge of ruling India at the time, dissolved during her rule. So she was instrumental in helping fuel public opinion in favor of British rule in India, condemning the violence that was going on, and helping them come to a conclusion there with her influence on public opinion. So there's Queen V. I was incorrect about the architect who designed the sculpture. The main architect on the sculpture, the main person who worked on the sculpture was Thomas Brock. I still think Aston Webb had a hand in designing it because he had a hand in designing parts of Buckingham and all of the gates and gardens around Buckingham Palace. This entire area basically is one big memorial to Victoria.